At 9:30 in the morning on August 1st, 2012, a computer in Jersey City started buying stocks. Nobody told it to. Nobody could tell it to stop. By 10:15, it had executed 4 million trades, moved 397 million shares, and lost $440 million. The company that owned it had 45 minutes left as an independent firm. To understand how 45 minutes did this, you need to understand what Knight Capital actually was. Knight was a market maker. When an ordinary person hit buy in a retail brokerage account, that order very often did not go straight to an exchange. It went to a firm like Knight, which would fill it out of its own inventory and pocket the difference between the buy price and the sell price. Fractions of a cent per share, billions of shares a day. In 2012, Knight handled around 10% of all trading in U.S. equities. It was not a household name. It was infrastructure, and like most infrastructure, almost nobody thought about it until it broke. The machine that did this work was called SMARS. SMARS stood for Smart Market Access Routing System. Its job was translation. A client sends one large order, say buy 1 million shares. SMARS breaks that parent order into hundreds of smaller child orders and sprays them across different exchanges, hunting for the best price without revealing the size of the original request. The critical part is the accounting. As child orders come back filled, SMARS decrements a counter. 1 million shares requested, 400,000 filled, 600,000 remaining. When the counter reaches 0, the parent order is complete and SMARS stops. That counter is the only thing standing between a routing system and infinity. Remember that sentence. In the early 2000s, SMARS supported an order type called PowerPeg. PowerPeg was a tool for manual market making. It would place an order at a price, and when that order got filled, it would immediately place it again and again. Deliberately relentless. That was the point. It was designed to keep a position open in the market until a cumulative share count was reached. The share counter was what made it safe. In 2003, Knight retired PowerPeg, and they retired it carefully. They marked the order type deprecated. They moved clients off it. They set defaults so that no one could select it. They did not delete the code. It stayed on the servers, unreachable, for 9 years. Dormant code in production is not unusual. Most engineers have shipped some. Under normal conditions, it does nothing at all. Then, in 2005, an engineer refactored SMARS. The share counting logic, the part that tracked how much of a parent order had been filled, got moved to an earlier stage in the pipeline. This was a reasonable change. For every live code path, it worked correctly. But the dormant PowerPeg code was not a live code path. Nobody tested it, because as far as everyone was concerned, it did not exist. And after the refactor, PowerPeg no longer had a counter. It was now a routine that placed orders and had no concept of when to stop. 9 years pass. Nothing happens. Nothing can happen, because nothing can reach that code. Something is about to reach that code. In 2012, the New York Stock Exchange announced a new program, the Retail Liquidity Program, designed to give retail investors slightly better prices. It was scheduled to go live on August 1st. Knight had to be ready. Not being ready meant losing retail order flow to competitors, and retail order flow was the business. So Knight wrote new code to handle RLP orders. And here, The engineers made a decision that sounds trivial and was not. Inside SMARS, each order carried a set of flags, switches that turned behaviors on and off. There was an old flag, unused since 2003, that had once activated PowerPeg. Rather than define a new flag, they reused that one. The flag now meant two different things, depending on which version of the code was reading it. On any server running the new code, it meant root this as an RLP order. On any server still running the old code, it meant start PowerPeg. As long as every server ran the new code, that ambiguity was invisible. Between July 27th and August 1st, a night technician deployed the new code by hand to the SMARS servers. There were 8 of them. He copied it to 7. There was no second engineer reviewing the deployment. There was no automated check comparing what was running on each machine. There was no written procedure requiring either. So for 5 days, nobody knew. Server 8 sat in the rack carrying 9-year-old code, wired to a flag that was about to start firing. At 8 on the morning of August 1st, an hour and a half before the market opened, Knight's systems began sending automated emails. 97 of them. Each one referenced SMARS. Each one carried an error string. PowerPeg disabled. These messages went to a group of Knight employees. They were not designed as system alerts. There was no protocol that classified them as critical, no one whose job it was to triage them, and nothing in their formatting to distinguish them from routine noise. They were, in retrospect, a perfect description of what was about to happen. Sent 90 minutes in advance to the right company, naming the right subsystem. Nobody read them as a warning, because nothing in the system said they were one. The market opened at 9:30. Retail orders flowed into SMARS. 7 servers read the flag and routed them as RLP orders exactly as designed. Server 8 read the same flag and started PowerPeg. It placed an order. The order filled. With no counter to decrement, it registered nothing and placed the order again. It filled again. The loop ran at machine speed. Knight was buying at the ask and selling at the bid, over and over, in 154 different stocks. Each cycle lost money by construction. This was not a bad bet. It was a machine paying the spread to itself thousands of times a second, roughly $10 million a minute. Knight's own buying pushed the prices of those stocks up, which meant that when the positions eventually had to be sold, they would be sold into a market Knight itself had distorted. Traders across the street noticed within minutes. Volume in ordinary quiet stocks had gone vertical for no reason anyone could identify. Inside Knight, engineers could see something was catastrophically wrong. What they could not do was find it. Knight had no documented incident response procedure for this. The team's reasonable hypothesis was that the new code was the problem. It was the thing that had just changed. So they did what you do when a deployment goes wrong. They rolled it back. They removed the new RLP code from the 7 working servers, which meant that all 8 servers were now running the old code, which meant that all 8 servers now read the flag as start PowerPeg. The single failing machine became 8 failing machines. The system was finally shut down at around 10:15, 45 minutes after the open. So what was the root cause? It is usually reported as a single line of bad code. That is not what happened, and the real answer is more uncomfortable. No individual decision here was unreasonable. Leaving dead code in production is normal. Refactoring a counter into an earlier stage is good practice. Reusing a retired flag is tidiness. Deploying by hand was how Knight had always deployed. Every one of these was defensible on the day it was made. The failure was that no single person at any point was looking at all of them together. The 2005 refactor removed a safety mechanism from code that nobody was maintaining. The 2012 flag decision built a bridge to that code. The manual deployment left one door open, and the alerting system that could have caught it had no way to say the word urgent. 4 separate decisions spread across 9 years, none of them wrong on their own, that only became lethal in combination, and combined for the first time at 9:30 in the morning, with no human in the loop. That is what a root cause usually looks like, not a villain, a set of reasonable choices that were never in the same room. Knight lost $440 million, more than the company was worth. It survived the week on an emergency rescue financing that handed most of the firm to its investors. In December, 4 months later, it was acquired by a competitor. The SEC fined it $12 million for failing to have adequate controls on market access. The name no longer exists. Next, on a hot afternoon in August 2003, a power line in Ohio sags into a tree. Within 8 seconds, an alarm system fails silently, and 55 million people begin to lose electricity. Root cause: